Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Court-Martail Podcast. Introducing your host for this evening first. He is the host with the most from the West Coast, the Bay Area Brawler, Skylar Greenberg. And his partner, he has colonized, energized, and revolutionized the podcasting wrestling world today. Your Colonial Champion, Sean McCarty. And welcome, one and all, once again to another spectacular edition of the Court-Martail Podcast. I am your Colonial Champion, Sean McCarty, alongside, as always, the man of the hour, the man with the power, too sweet to be sour, the Bay Area Brawler, Skylar Greenberg. How are you doing this week, sir?
Has Goldberg won the title yet?
No, we gotta wait until the end of January for that.
Okay, well, my mood's gonna be worse as we get closer and closer to the end of the month.
It's just
what
getting...
else is new?
Yeah, it's getting, yeah, that's what I've come to expect from WWE at this point and from the standard they present. And I still can't believe they're going through with that. I still cannot believe they're going through with that. But at the same time...
Now, for you Court-Martail Podcast listeners, what you should know is that after last week's show when we went off the air, I suggested, what happened if Goldberg wins the title and Hogan wins the Royal Rumble match?
Yeah, and...
2021, make your dreams come true.
You know what? Let's just make it happen. At this point, let's just make it happen. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. We're getting ahead of ourselves because we've got more geriatric wrestlers to talk about today. So let's begin instead with our latest segment. Hit that intro, baby. Coming straight to you from the Golden Gate Garage, this is the Wrestle News with Skylar Green.
It is the one, the only, the wrestling news of the week with the Bay Area Brawler, Skylar Greenberg, at your service.
Damn right.
So where do we start? How about we go to everybody's favorite wrestling ghetto, Impact.
Okay. Let's talk about Impact Wrestling.
So, the first announcement that happened, and the second I read it, I knew you would be cheering up and down, is that Josh Matthews is no longer going to be an announcer, and neither is Madison Rayne, which is a name that caught me on surprise. I don't watch Impact, so I didn't know she was on commentary. I don't know how she was. But anyways, they got promoted to senior producers backstage, and then taking their places will be Matt Striker and D'Lo Brown.
I'm happy with both of those guys. I mean, I know, it seems like Striker gets a lot of flack because he does a lot of kayfabe breaking things in his commentary, but I've always thought he stole the moment pretty well. At least he did in Lucha Underground. I'm willing to give this a shot with this. I didn't even know Madison Rayne was doing commentary because I cannot listen to Impact with Josh Matthews on the microphone. It is the absolute dogs of shits. It is so bad, and I'm just so thankful. I mean, I can't say that I've ever been happier for a guy's promotion than I have been for Josh Matthews. Congratulations, sir.
And this is not us saying that Josh Matthews as a person is bad overall.
Yeah, I have nothing against him.
Yes, he sucks at commentary.
You know what the problem is? He tries to, it's almost like he tries to artificially add, that Gorilla Monsoon, level severity to what he's saying, but it just comes off insincere. You know, and he's coming over from his and must continue. It sounds so forced. That I just can't deal with it. It's just he is not commentary material. And I've talked to a lot of people who used to watch Impact, and they all agree with that.
Right, and I know people complain about Matt Striker having the same issue of believing in his own hype like Josh Matthews does, but at least I can listen to Matt Striker.
Yeah.
I cannot listen to Josh Matthews.
Matt Striker will still sell the gravity of the moment no matter what, based on the story that they're working with. And that's something that he always did very well. I always thought that Matt Stryker, for the shortcomings that Vampiro had as a commentator, held his own very, very well in that situation. And no disrespect to Vampiro.
Hopefully he's able to make Impact sound better.
Yeah, I honestly...
commentary team,
it's going to help.
Sorry, continue.
It's going to help.
It is. Now, this new commentary team will take the booth on Impact's Hard to Kill on January 15th. You may actually be listening to this before or after that event. And, of course, the main event is Kenny Omega and the Good Brothers versus Rich Swann and the Motor City Machine Guns. Do you think that match will be good?
I was listening over what I said last week on the podcast where I said that was going to be a spot fest. And I think to some description that's going to be true. But honestly, I think a lot of it is going to be pretty good. I think that because 4 out of 6 of those guys know how to actually work, it makes things a lot easier to digest what Kenny Omega brings to the table, as well as Rich Swann, who I think are a little too spot heavy as opposed to actually letting the fans digest the moves that they do. But it'll be fine. I think 2/3 of it is going to be pretty good.
It's the tag teams that are going to be good. It's the singles guys when they're in the ring that's going to suck.
But it's also going to be victim to what every match in modern wrestling is that's got 6 men in it. It's going to go 35 minutes. And it's going to have 2 comebacks and 2, it's going to be a modern wrestling match, and that alone is going to take away, at least in my eyes, takes away from it.
Right. And before any of you guys ask, no, we're not going to review Impact because it's Impact.
Even though we've done several Impact matches from its yesteryears, so I'm not afraid to put him in the match of the week. But we're not doing.
Here's the thing. Is that Impact in the yesteryear, it was bad, but at least it was bad to watch and kind of funny. This is just going to be.
It's going to be bad.
It's going to be bad, but it's not going to be bad enough that you can laugh at it.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be like. The problem is, it's bad, but they think it's good, so they don't realize it's bad.
And speaking of that. We're going to go to Stamford, Connecticut.
Oh, boy. What do you got for us?
Great segue, Sean.
I love it.
So Drew McIntyre, the WWE Champion, has COVID-19.
Yes.
And this is the first time that WWE has acknowledged that one of their wrestlers has COVID-19 and is addressing it. So he's going to be quarantined for the next 2 weeks. Sadly, it does not stop him from possibly wrestling Goldberg.
Yeah, but you know what? At least, you know what WWE should do? They should take an opportunity here. They were just gifted the ultimate out for Drew McIntyre. Drew McIntyre got COVID-19, is too weak and can't beat Goldberg, who has not had COVID-19 at 54. This gives them the ultimate out for Drew McIntyre, saying he wasn't at full strength. It's that he could come back, he can win the title back from Goldberg at WrestleMania, and then bury Goldberg underneath a vat of acid, and then a concrete block, and then another vat of acid.
And then bring him back so that he can beat Roman Reigns.
Yes, and then, of course, we can bring him back for a triple threat with Brock Lesnar and The Undertaker.
No! Oh, God!
But
no!
But in any event, it's still, I mean, WWE wasn't going to do it unless they were forced to do it, and now they're forced to do it, because that's your world champion. What are you supposed to do? Say, oh, well,
you could do what they did with one wrestler who had COVID-19 on January 8th SmackDown and just send them home without telling us who it is.
I was going to say, you could just fire them, because that seemed to be the idea with Renee Young.
She wasn't fired. Her contract just expired and she was let go.
Yeah, but very much it has been revealed afterwards that there was dirty looks for her revealing that she even had it. Because they wanted to downplay the fact that it even existed.
On a podcast where they were trying to send her to classes to get rid of her Canadian accent.
Yeah.
That's
Why?
stupid.
Why?
She's Canadian. How are you going to get someone who's been saying about their entire life to not say about?
Well, I mean, they did try to have Ed Ferrara be. Oh no, I'm sorry, that was WCW. Ed Ferrara being Oklahoma, and I'm sorry.
Monkey see, monkey do.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That was although didn't he do an appearance as Oklahoma in WWF?
I think he did.
I swear to God he did.
And they kept the accent.
I swear to God Ferrara did. I'm sorry to bring that dude up. I'm not a fan of his by any means.
No. His name in wrestling lore will go down for so bad it's good, but still bad.
So bad that it's some people might think it's good, but it's mostly bad. But
mostly bad.
But we would say that. But speaking of, what's next?
Speaking of, so to combine a little bit of Impact news and WWE news, MSK, who used to be the Radicals on Impact, made their debut in the Dusty Classic on January 13th, 2021.
Okay.
Have you seen the Radicals?
I don't know if I've ever seen a match of theirs all the way through.
Okay, well, I mean, it is Impact, so...
Yeah, sorry, Impact. You know, it's they're not one of those teams that I'm looking to, I'm like, that people have said, oh, you gotta watch these guys. Like, the North is one of those teams that they're like, you gotta check these guys out. I've had a lot of people say that, and they definitely lived up to the hype. The Radicals, I really don't know a whole lot about either of these guys.
Well, I mean, we're going to be able to watch them in the Dusty Classic, so hopefully they do well. Anyways, so we're going to leave WWE for a little bit. I could call some other news, but there's a lot that we have to get through today, so we're just going to go quickly. And if I miss something, well, it's not that important.
All right, what do you got?
So we're going to go and transition to All Elite Wrestling. Now, it has just come out that Nick Jackson, one half of the AEW Tag Team Champions, and Chris Jericho had tested positive for COVID-19 in September. Now, the timing of that is very important because Jericho in late August played at
Sturgis, yes, I was just thinking that.
We're not saying Chris Jericho got COVID at Sturgis. Well, it's possible now, isn't it?
Well. Oh, Chris. Oh, I mean, is anyone really surprised? We all said it, and we all were like, dude, why are you doing this? And they were like, oh, it's fine. But of course, now that we would get notification of like, oh yeah, by the way, and he got it. And I'm surprised they didn't give it to more people, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I suppose, but at the end of the day, it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's just funny how much he... and you remember what he did in response? When he was getting blasted for playing Sturgis?
What did he do?
And he was like, oh, he went after Cornette about how Cornette is awful for hating... that was when he banned Cornette from watching AEW.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
Yeah, he was like, yo, Jim Cornette is officially banned from watching AEW or AEW Dark. Because I'm getting heat for this, and I want to divert my heat to this guy who's really good at getting heat.
And that way people will forget what a stupid decision I just made.
Oh, amazing. Amazing.
But speaking of stupid decisions, the main event for January 13th, All Elite Wrestling TNA... Damn it! AEW Dynamite. I'm sorry, TNA.
Anyways. It's an easy setup and an easy punchline.
Yep. So the main event of AEW Dynamite was for the TNT Championship between Darby Allin and Brian Cage. And at one point during the match, Taz gets up on the apron to distract the referee. Ricky starts interfering with Darby Allin. He goes to the top rope. The lights go out. And out comes Sting, and he finally swings his baseball bat, hitting Starks in the neck and then in the belly.
And
then helping Darby Allin retain the TNT Championship.
Wait, back up. You're saying Sting did something?
Sting
in the 4 weeks that Sting has shown up on I'm sorry, I almost said WCW. See, it's such an easy setup. It's such an easy setup. But in the 4 weeks that Sting has been on AEW programming, he has walked up and stared at people, walked up and stared at people, walked up and stared at people, and now finally he has hit somebody after all this time. Amazing.
And then he continued to walk, staring at people.
Oh, of course. I mean, this dude's making easily $100K an appearance just to stand and stare at people. What a gig. What a gig to milk Tony Khan for his money, to just stand there and stare at people for a month and be like, yeah, I just made $500,000 this month just staring at people.
Just think.
What a
those
life.
2 swings of the baseball bat were $50,000 each.
Incredible.
Can I swing a baseball bat for $50,000?
I wonder if somebody's gonna like try to auction off their shirt that the bat hit on eBay. If they're, when AEW inevitably either goes out of business or shapes up, and they purge all the crap talent that's on that show.
No, here's the thing. Starks was wearing he was wearing a really, really weird blazer. I don't know what to call it.
I like Ricky Starks. I think he's really good. I liked what he did on NWA Power. I don't know how much I like the Stroke Daddy gimmick, but he's still a hell of a competitor. But
just think, Sting just gets paid thousands upon thousands of dollars to just paint his face up and stand there.
This is 2021 news in a nutshell, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, and our top headline: Sting does something.
And that ends the news report on Sting and Face.
Wow, and what a great way to segue into the topic I've got for today, which is face paint. Face paint in wrestling. We've got so many competitors over the years, so many wrestlers who have donned the face paint. When has it worked? When is it not? And there's definitely occasions for both. So let's just start out, Sky, by naming our list of favorite face-painted wrestlers and talk about why we like them. And I'm going to start with Goldust.
Goldust is fantastic.
Dustin Rhodes, it's interesting because if you watch WCW and what he was doing with just being the natural Dustin Rhodes, right? When he was starting out being Dusty's son, blah, blah, blah. And he gets all the way to WWE, and then he transitions into Goldust, where he's this weird pseudo-sexual gold man from Hollywood. And
it was a gimmick that was so ahead of its time and was the right gimmick for the Attitude Era because of how controversial it was and the nature that anything could happen if Goldust was involved.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't think that gimmick would have worked without the face paint. Because it made him so unique.
Dustin's mannerisms with the face paint is what sold it.
Oh yeah, and then of course, as every single wrestler who wears face paint can attest to, the face paint just comes off during the match. It always added a little bit to the victories when Goldust had, it still looked like, he'd almost turned human after being covered in that much paint. And
exactly.
And that's one of those times that worked really, really well. Even now, as Dustin Rhodes, nearing, what is he, 50 now?
I believe he's like 52.
Yeah, he's old, man. He's wrestling way old. And, but still, even the face
51.
paint now looks good.
Well, it helps to be a really good painter. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to do the face paint very well.
Well, and there's, there've always been good painters and bad painters. The Road Warriors always ended up having simple enough paint to where even when it didn't look good that day, it was still fine enough because, they're Road Warriors.
Exactly. Who was the person who painted Kamala's face?
I think it was Lawler.
If that's the case, and Lawler does a great face paint.
I want to say for the first time, I think for the first time when they first made him the Ugandan Giant, I think it was either Lawler or Jerry Jarrett, and I can't remember which of the two. I want to say it was Jerry Lawler because he's the one who came up with the whole idea of Kamala.
Right, because on anyone else, it would probably just be random symbols and random shapes and colors. But on Kamala, it's the Ugandan Giants.
Yeah, it worked.
It's this monster.
Yeah, it's and that, that's another good one. But then you have that one time when Roddy Piper donned his face half in blackface.
No.
It happened.
We are not discussing. No.
It happened.
It never happened.
It did happen. Sky, you can't hide from the truth. You can't hide from the truth. It happened, Sky.
Even though it was so extremely racist.
It was in horribly poor taste. Because who was he feuding with? Bad News Brown?
Something like that.
I think he was feuding. Yeah, it was just bad timing by Roddy. Bad timing.
I don't think it was bad timing. It was the timing that they wanted.
Well, yeah, and I mean, it's still, it was one of those face paint deals where it's not the one looked in most fond recognition. What do you think of Jeff Hardy's, where it's changed so dramatically over the years?
I like Jeff Hardy's. I like Jeff Hardy when he does it, because when he does it, it's so complex and unique and interesting, and it's never the same. It always changes.
Yeah, and he always it's really evolved over the years. I personally like Jeff without the face paint myself, but that doesn't mean that I think that Jeff does any worse with it. I think that it's really cool, especially when he was coming out in the black light now, because he's got all those like luminescent colors and those neons that really get accentuated and pop out when he comes down the ring.
Another good one I want to mention is Finn Balor. Now, let me say it right now, Finn Balor as a wrestler, at least in the beginning, he doesn't interest me. His NXT run has been good, but his initial bullet playing babyface doesn't interest me.
Agreed.
When he puts on the demon paint, looks damn good.
It does. I miss the days. He's really talented. I miss the days back when he was wrestling in New Japan, where he was able to actually do the Marvel character, like the Marvel and the DC characters. Like he had the Carnage and the what did he do? Venom as well. He had a whole series of ones.
He did Venom. He did Spider-Man. I think he did a Captain America. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that was really cool. I think that was what really captivated people to watch him in a lot of ways, and that ended up being really advantageous for the spot that he ended up landing.
Now, the one thing about face paint, and you and me can both agree about this, and this is something I really hate with wrestlers who do face paints. Face paint is not a character.
Agreed.
It can highlight a character. It can definitely highlight a trait of a character. But if you do not give meaning behind the person wearing the face paint, then the face paint does not matter.
Dare I say Sarah Logan's name?
You may, because she's one of the ones that's guilty of that. As much as I love Finn Balor, he's also guilty of that. I don't know if it's the company or if it's just him, but they never gave a logical explanation for the face paint, other than he wears it when he needs it. That's like a Michael Cole quote.
But he doesn't use it against Brock Lesnar, but he feels worth bringing it out against Baron Corbin.
And I remember that Baron Corbin match, and Jonathan Coachman asking Corey Graves and Michael Cole, why doesn't he just wear it all the time?
Yeah.
And Michael Cole just said...
And there was no answer to that. They were like,
And then I'm sure someone was yelling in Coachman's ear, damn it, don't expose the business.
Yeah, seriously. Oh, God.
But that's the thing, is a lot of people who wear the face paint just wear it and they don't add a character. Like, remember when the Usos had face paint? And it's like, it's the Usos. Now it's the Usos with face paint.
Yeah, and that was really it. What was their defining characteristic? We're this part of the famous NY family, and that's pretty much all they had going for them. And then plus face paint.
And then the other thing, too, is that wasn't even changed. They just added paint to them.
Yeah, no, there was no other characteristic or defining quality that was layered on top to make them any more likable. And it took them actually getting rid of all of that for them to actually start getting over.
Right, and you and I both know we have to talk about this one. the one guy that is guilty of wearing face paint and saying that's a character when it wasn't.
Ultimate Warrior?
The Ultimate Warrior.
Oh, Ultimate Warrior. What an interesting human being he is. A fascinating man. In a crazy way. Well, it still is. It still is interesting to look back at the Ultimate Warrior from start to finish. But
how he ever became successful is beyond me.
He had the charisma. You know, that's the funny thing about wrestling. Sometimes it has nothing to do with the quality of wrestling. It's the charisma. You know, it's always fascinating to me. Like, Hulk Hogan's a great example of that, because if you look at his matches in the AWA, where Hulkamania was starting to get going, he was doing a lot of headlocks and wrist locks and takeovers. It's like Hulk knew how to wrestle, but when he went to Vince and it really just became the cartoonish Hulk Hogan, they didn't pay to watch Hulk wrestle. They paid to watch Hulk be Hulk. And I think the Ultimate Warrior falls into that same kind of category, except he never learned how to actually wrestle.
Right. Like, there's a reason why Hogan was successful beyond the 80s, because he was able to transition his character from a good guy to a bad guy to a good guy to a bad guy and add new characters. As much shit as we give Hogan, he knew professional wrestling.
He did. He did.
But Ultimate Warrior didn't know it, and once he was starting to run out of steam, he wasn't hot anymore.
Well, and then he started believing too much in his own shit as well, which was not helpful, because then, you know, he's burying Triple H and no selling the pedigree of WrestleMania and then no showing events.
And then going to WCW.
Yeah. And then nearly getting lit on fire in arguably the worst match in history.
You say that, but we just watched Randy Orton and Bray Wyatt set each other on fire.
Yeah, that was pretty bad. But do you even call that a match? There was no winner. It's still going on. That Inferno match is still happening as we speak, Sky.
So stupid.
Nobody was called.
One final question for Face Paint before we move on to our next segment.
Go, Def.
How do you feel about Darby Allin and his face paint?
Fine. The face paint is not the thing that turns me off about Darby Allin. The fact that he is 90 pounds soaking wet with a brick in each pocket is what disturbs me about Darby Allin. That's really...
It doesn't look good when the average wrestling fan looks like they can beat up Darby Allin.
Yeah, it's just, he's so painfully small. But I like everything else about him. He does try to lay it in. His selling is fine. I could see why people like him. I wish he would not wear the pantyhose and the jorts.
Do you think if they stick a needle in him with steroids, it would go through his arm?
I mean, maybe. I mean, I'm not, nobody's recommending that. But...
well, we may need to because he's still small.
All right, well, easy, superstar Billy Graham. Let's reel this back here.
Anything's gonna be big, damn it.
Easy, I know. I feel your plight. But
still,
but his face paint's fine.
Watching Sting, yeah.
Yeah, the face paint is the least of my issues with him.
Yeah, but it's interesting to watch Sting be his mentor, and I'm interested to see where it goes.
Well, what's also interesting about Sting is that he's had many different transitions of face paint, and we're going to reel back the clock and look at one of the early versions, folks, because you know what time it is. I know what time it is. It's the second half of the show. Roll that intro! What time is it? It's the fight, it's the brawl, it's the match of the week. It's tonight, watch along with the son of a beat. It's one fall, the down for the 1, 2, and 3. So don't stall, hang on to the edge of your seat. We got a punch and a flip and a powerbomb too. All the moves and the stars are all under review. See the baby face cheered and the heels get heat. This is wrestling at its peak. It's the match of the week. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. It is the one, the only match of the week review. Here we are once again. For those of you who saw the live stream, my boy Abe Bizzle was there to watch it all with me. We had some delicious bacon wrapped scallops. It was a great time. we are going to watch Sting versus Big Van Vader, Starrcade 1992. No match, no title on the line in this matchup, which I thought there was, but there was not. What did you think about this match, Sky?
I actually have not seen this match, and I'm going to completely succeed this to you because I have never really watched WCW.
So you didn't get a chance to watch it, is what you're saying?
No, I didn't have a chance to watch it.
Well, sir, I'm going
to sit back and I'm going to let you paint me a story.
Well, this matchup, well, first of all, let me say that this was like tail end of Jim Herd. You know, Herd was about to leave, be succeeded by, I think George Scott was the guy they put in for that, and then Kevin Sullivan booked for a little bit, and then, of course, it turned into Eric Bischoff and Kevin Sullivan, and Bischoff took over, and yada, 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 and then the rest is history. This matchup between Sting and Vader, they'd had, of course, their title matches in years past for the WCW Heavyweight Championship. Sting and Vader, this matchup was everything you would think this match would be. I mean, it was amazing to see just how into every single action Sting put into it. I mean, it was even just kicking out or just even just getting his shoulder up or shoving Vader. It was just, Vader knew how to be a heel. Harley Race it aside. Here is the interesting bit of this guy, and this is why I think you should watch this match. The commentary team was JR and a goateed Jesse Ventura.
Really?
Yes. And they honestly did a great job of hyping up the moment. And Jesse was great telling Sting, you know, he should just get counted out and live to fight another day. And JR, of course, fighting back with that. The heat spot was
this Surfer Sting or Dark Sting?
This was Surfer Sting. This is 1992.
When did Surfer Sting die and it become Dark Sting?
Surfer Sting, I would say probably 95 was when Surfer Sting started to die, because Sting started getting the hair long and he started dyeing it black, but he wasn't officially like Crow Sting yet. He was just Sting, but long black hair. And he still wore like the Surfer Sting face paint. And then, but you know, that was kind of as he was transitioning with the NWO showing up, and then of course getting taken down, and then the Crow, and then, you know, the rest from there. Then NWO, Wolfpack Sting, and then back to regular Sting, and then whatever the hell Joker Sting was.
Yeah, and then Impact and Joker Sting.
Which, for the record, I did like Joker Sting. Say what you want about Sting, I did enjoy it.
I think Joker Sting was honestly his best character.
It was very fun. He did a really good job making it his own and not making it so blatantly a ripoff. But he held his own.
An homage.
Yes, that's a good way to put it, an homage. But this match with him and Vader, it was great. I mean, the big moves, the no-selling by Vader, Sting getting the advantage. Harley Race was in Vader's corner. Vader having to regroup a couple of times. Sting getting overzealous and doing the splash onto the barricade on the outside of the ring, but Vader getting out of the way. Vader takes over with the heat. Sting starts to make a comeback. They do a bit of a back and forth. And then the finish. I know I'm glossing over a lot here, but it's honestly worth the match, worth watching the match. What's interesting about this in WCW, and Abe Bizzle pointed this out during the live stream, you know, AEW had in the beginning when they were doing their initial matchups where they were having the barricades really close to the ring.
Oh, yeah.
To the point where, like, Kenny Omega was diving over the top and his legs were hitting the sides of the barricades, and it looked like he was about to hit a kid in the face.
I mean, that's indie special.
That was very much the case with WCW 1992. And Sting did a big springboard that was really impressive that came down as well and knocked them both down. And Harley was so funny because he did this fun, like, sidestep because he did not want to take the bump at all because Sting went and jumped on both of them. But then the finish, it was Vader kept throwing down and kept going to the top rope repeatedly, slammed him down, did a big splash, didn't do the Vader bomb, didn't do the moonsault, but he was going to jump up. Sting got up, and of course Sting, great at selling at this point. One of the few really good points of 1992 WCW was Sting. And Vader gets up, goes to hit the crossbody, goes to on top of the ring, on the top rope. Sting grabs him at a crossbody, lands him down and or into a power slam, and goes for the cover, but Vader's shoulders come off the mat. So it's like a roll-up 3 count, but Vader's shoulders lifted, and I don't know whether that was planned or not. Because I think that was supposed to be just a decisive Sting win, but Vader's shoulders were clearly off the mat. Like, worse than Ronda Rousey and Becky Lynch.
So that's terrible refereeing, is what you're saying.
So, well, it's terrible refereeing, but I'm not sure whether that was done intentionally so that Harley Race would have the out later on of saying, oh, well, Sting didn't really pin him because his shoulders were up and the referee didn't see it, so give me a rematch, blah, blah, blah. Of course, I wasn't paying attention to what was happening after this in WCW because it's still Jim Herd WCW, but honestly...
You know what they had... You know what they feuded after this?
Shockmaster.
Oh, really?
Shockmaster was coming up in 93. British Bulldog was over in 93, yep. So this is where this was headed.
WCW.
Because this is WCW 93. This was headed towards the Shockmaster. Thank you, WCW, for being the wrestling meme that everybody needs.
Yeah.
But honestly, I guess to sum this up, this was honestly a pretty good match. It was worth watching. It was, it's one of those it's Vader is good at what he does. He's still stiff. You can tell he's still stiff. Loses the mask early. Sting had come into his own at this point. You know, he was never going to be what he would be in WCW, but he was definitely, this was probably nearing the peak of what Sting was doing in the early 90s at least. Not counting, you know, well, no, because, well, we'll get to that because we're about to talk about Sting. As good a segue as any, Superstar Spotlight, let's talk about Sting. Sky, I'm going to let you start.
So Sting is a really interesting career because it's a very long one, and it's an interesting trajectory, but I would say 4 main, well...
Yeah.
AEW is okay.
Yeah.
Okay, 5 periods of time where Sting was in a different company and doing different things.
Yep.
There's Surfer Sting, then there was Crow Sting, then there was that time in Impact, the little short run in WWE, and then what he's doing now in AEW. When did Sting start wrestling? In 86, 87?
Somewhere around there, I think, is where it came in, and we were kind of debating that yesterday on the live stream. I think 86, 87 is roughly when he started breaking in. Was Ric Flair's, I guess, baby, his pet project. Of course, there's that story about Ric promising to drop the belt to Sting in 89, but Sting, of course, getting injured and then having to drop it instead to Luger, and then Flair having to win it back, only to drop it to Sting later. And
yes, in the tumultuous late 80s, early 90s of the NWA.
Yeah, the end of Crockett, heading into the Jim Herd era, which is...
We just left the Jim Herd era. I don't want to go back in.
Yeah, yeah, no, honestly. But on Surfer Sting, inexperienced, obviously the predominant baby face. I think that what he did with Flair was great. Having a guy like Flair to teach him what he wouldn't have known otherwise was a huge help. You mentioned the Ultimate Warrior, of course, the Blade Runners, Sting and the Ultimate Warrior, how they broke in together as a tag team, but neither of which were real wrestling fans heading into the business. So
but I feel like Sting's career would have gone the way of the Ultimate Warrior if he didn't learn Like, I think Sting was self-conscious enough to realize that I don't know enough about wrestling, so I need to learn how to do this. And because he was learning, and because he was a bit more humble than the Warrior, that's why he became better.
Well, and I think it helps to have a guy like Ric Flair to be able to teach you and to walk up to Sting and basically be like, no, stick with me, I'll take care of you. You know,
right. Which, that would have been interesting. What happened if Ultimate... Okay. Wrestling, what if? What if Ultimate Warrior trained with Ric Flair and Sting, and they broke in together as a tag team as heavies for Ric Flair?
I don't think that Rick would allow that. I don't think Rick would have taken to the man that is Jim Hellwig in that same kind of way, just based on what you said, Sky, based basically on his lack of endearing character traits. And I don't know if Flair would have seen the overall potential in Warrior the same way that he did with Sting. I think he saw that Sting was grasping major concepts while also being able to learn the basics of the wrestling itself that Warrior was not getting and wasn't going to get based on what he was doing at the time and the kind of attention he wanted to put into his work.
I have to agree. As much as that would have been an interesting scenario, I just don't think Ric Flair would have put up with Warrior.
Yeah, it's not, you know, I don't think that their styles would have clashed, you know, and I think the personality of Sting really helped with him, and that cultivation really led him into what turned into be the weirdest thing for me is when WCW decided to take the turn, right? It started with the NWO and get into that dark hip thing, and then Sting comes back as the Crow. And it's so weird to me that Sting has made the most money in his career when he's said nothing, staring at people. That's what's gotten him the most over, is him doing literally nothing.
Maybe Tony Khan does know professional wrestling because he's doing the thing that WCW did with Sting for almost a year.
Well, and
have him be in the rafters, look at people, and be scary.
Well, it's only a shame that 20 years ago it worked and it got him over, and now 20 years later he's like 61, and it's like everyone's like, dude, what are you doing here? It's like,
well, I think it helps now that wrestling fans were smart to this. Like, we know that Sting is an older man. Like, it would be one thing if Sting was like in his 40s or 30s now.
Yeah.
But then we would be saying, oh, he must be limited because they're not having him be in the ring. They're just protecting him.
Yeah, and believably, you know, that's the thing now. It's just he's 61. And it's just believably wrestling, especially with like the retirement and the thing with his neck with Seth Rollins. And then that leads me to an interesting thing. It's like, I don't never feel like Sting ever really gets his major moment that he deserves. That's like the one thing that was always taken away from Sting. Like Starrcade 97, which was supposed to be the big Sting coronation. And then we have the Bret Hart shenanigans and the Randy Anderson quick 3 count. And WCW gumming that up. So it doesn't feel any good. Then he goes to WWE a decade later, and they pretty much bury him to Triple H at Mania as he's teaming up with his sworn enemies, the NWO, and then loses his career to Seth Rollins during a buckle bomb, and that's all he does.
Are you completely skipping and not NWA, TNA?
No, I'm just. It seems like in these big moments, and there's a lot of times that Sting is. The TNA's really, and that's kind of my overall point. TNA has really been the only place that has truly taken care of Sting as a wrestler.
Which is weird to say, but yeah, honestly, I agree. Now, Wrestling What If number 2. What if Sting was the one to defeat NWO Hollywood Hogan and destroy the NWO and win the title? Would that have changed anything?
Well, Sting still won the title, but they kind of dragged that big, stupid finish into the quick count for Hogan, and then Sting won it, and then they did the, oh, well, I guess nobody won it, and Sting throw it down, which was the, you know, it just didn't work for me, but, you know, because WCW. But if Sting...
If they had made it more of a definitive victory, do you think it would have changed things?
Well, I don't think the NWO would have disappeared. I think that it would have facilitated, and I think the split of WCW into the Wolfpack would have transitioned better. Because then you've lost your figurehead, right? The big guy Hogan. Hogan's up the one on top of the mountain. Even though he lost to Luger, screw him. We beat him 6 days later. Screw Luger. Sting definitively beats.
Then you lose to Sting, and it's like, what? You can't do this twice? Okay, fine. Kevin Nash is going to take over.
And that's just it. And then, if you recall, then later on, let's say he loses at Super Bowl. They have the return match at Super Bowl, which they actually did. And Sting wins again. Maybe DDP comes to defense. Maybe some WCW guys start fighting back. And then NWO starts getting upset because they're starting to lose momentum. And then, in April, you can do what you actually did with WCW and have Randy Savage make his big pecking order speech about Hogan not being capable of leading the NWO to what it needs to be. And then you could cause that divide, and it would have worked so much more smoothly instead of doing what WCW does and messing up everyone at once and putting Bret Hart in and not knowing how to use Bret. Bret should never have joined the NWO. That made no sense.
Well, that was at a time when everyone was a member of the NWO.
I know. Well, even still, when he was just an alliance partner with Hogan and them in '98, it was like, no. You start out great with a match with Ric Flair and Bret Hart. You start with Ric Flair and Bret Hart. And we're talking about Sting. I've got Sting on the brain. You start with that, and then...
You must be thinking of all the times that Ric Flair has cheated on women.
I know. It's just, Rick sets himself up for these jokes. But in any event, Sting, WCW, yeah, they gave him they gave him what he gave, and he was loyal to WCW even amidst all the crap. But TNA is really the place that said this is a guy who deserves recognition in a good spot, in a good place. Sting, I think at that point, had smartened himself up to know how to protect himself from the real garbage. And, it's safe for the last rights match. But this is a guy whose career he's shown he's got good matches. He worked himself. He knows how to work. His career is definitely, he's known how to reinvent himself to make himself more endearing or more invitable or more likable as a gimmick. Could never be a heel.
Well, that's ironic because you would think the dark brooding guy would be a heel.
Yeah, but his charisma is just not for that. It's just not meant for that. He's so likable as a guy either just staring and saying nothing and pointing a bat or cutting an impassioned promo. Even when he did turn heel, allegedly, in 2009 or 2008, 2009, when he joined the Main Event Mafia, he cut a big promo and then everybody sided with him. They hated everybody else in that faction, but they loved Sting. It's the weirdest thing, but a career, and honestly, I really wish that he did not come back to AEW. I wish this guy would just retire. I mean, I know he's getting money, boatloads of money. I don't blame him a bit. But it's like, dude, I don't want to see you get paralyzed in the middle of the ring.
You know it's going to happen.
I don't want it to happen, though. I don't want to. Oh, God. Well, honestly, with the world titles that he's won and the way that he broke in and the amount of money he's made, Sting is honestly one of the biggest names in pro wrestling. Whether he's never been the top, most technical wrestler, but he's definitely one of the biggest names. And I give credit where credit's due to that for a guy who put the work in and made the career that he's made.
Definitely. He's one of those guys who's not like Warrior, who was a flash in the pan. He put enough good work and enough study in his craft that he can be the guy who can be a draw. And that's almost the most important thing about being wrestling. It doesn't even matter how good a wrestler you are. If you're a great draw and you can stay on top, then you're going to go far in this business.
Well, At least he was around somebody who knew how to make him a star, which is not what can be said about modern wrestling today. But we've got something especially to say as we wrap things up today, because next week, Sky, and I'm breaking this news to you, next week, we are doing the ACPW versus NWL redraft. We are going to can some folks, we're going to drop some people and pick some up. We'll explain it all next week. But stay tuned for that. We have got Season 2 coming. Are you excited, Sky?
I am, and I'm excited to kick your ass.
Oh, well, that is subjective, sir. As, of course, we still need to hear from you, the viewers, on which shows you like the best and which ones you don't. Of course, you know how to do that. Leave it in the comments while you're liking, sharing, subscribing, hitting that bell button, choke slamming it, putting it to all. You know how to do it. Skylar, thank you once again for coming on to the Court-Martail podcast. Mr. Co-host, as always, great week.
Thank you for having me, and I just want to say hockey's back. The world is right.
Well, let's hope that everything is heading towards the right direction. I know this podcast is. It's now time to take our first commercial break. I am your Colonial Champion, Sean McCarty, and we will see you next week after these short commercial breaks.